Now, it's been a minute since I touched on the Italians in New York. Now, there's been debates about Vinny the Chin and John Gotti. Who was more powerful? Who was the boss of bosses? Or did they low-key go to war off the record? Now, and of course, the most popular is John Gotti, being on the cover of magazines at the height of his run, seeing his face every time you turn on the news. When it comes to the life, that's a big no-no. Now, that all started when John Gotti makes a move on Big Paul Castellano, the boss of the Gambino family. See, the fellas already didn't like Paul. The family was already split into two factions. Neil Della Croce, which most men thought should have been a boss, was the underboss at the time, also the mediator between the two factions. Things were already hot for Paul Castellano with the commission indictments. When members of the Gotti crew got busted for drugs, which involved Angelo Ruggiero and Gene Gotti, it just didn't make things any better, especially with Paul Castellano being a very dangerous man while trying to get rid of any type of connections to his name. I mean, Roy DeMeo was a great earner and still ended up in the trunk of a car when things were getting hot. Now, after Angelo Ruggiero was caught on tape bad-mouthing the boss wanted the tapes even though he already had them. Neil kept stalling. They knew Angelo Ruggiero would have got clipped if it wasn't for Neil Della Croce. But when Neil died, the Gotti crew was on its way of being split up. Gotti would have been demoted from captain, or the whole crew would have just got wiped out. So Gotti had to move fast. He waxed Paul Castellano and Tommy Bellotti, which was another guy that was hated. Now, the Chin was old school. He didn't like how things weren't done the traditional way, having to sit down and getting an okay from the commission. Even though we had guys like Carlo Gambino that whacked his boss, people seem to forget that. The Chin looked at it like this: if Gotti could get away with it, then what's stopping any old body from whacking me or any other boss? Another reason is that the Chin had money tied in with Paul Castellano, and they were pretty cool. Now, a lot of people will say the Chin had something to do with the car bombing that hit Frankie the Chico. The only reason why I disagree is that the Chin was very low-key. And I mean low-key enough that he didn't want people even to say his name. They would just point to their chins. So a public explosion that could have killed innocent bystanders wasn't like him. Some say it was meant for Gotti, but I think it was really meant for the Chico. The Chico was more powerful than Gotti, and he was teaching Gotti the ropes. He was calling the shots, so getting rid of the Chico would cripple the Gambino family. And yes, it was retaliation for the Castellano hit, because the Chico should have known better. You have to think about how smart these bosses really were. Just like John Gotti was smart enough not to retaliate, it was Angelo Ruggiero, and when he found that out, he got him shelved. The gas pipe hit caused John Gotti to be sent for by the commission. And I want you to ask yourself one thing: where was the commission during the Frankie the Chico hit if it was accidental? Now, we all know, gas pipe had something to do with it. And he might have approached Vinny the Chin, but Chin might have just said, do what you have to do, and just looked the other way. Now, and I know some's going to disagree, and that's what the comments are for. So John Gotti didn't understand business. He went from captain straight to the boss. And many would say he was made captain out of favoritism. Vinny the Chin was boss, but he would walk up and down the street in his pajamas talking to himself to make himself look insane. So yes, imagine looking at a guy like he's crazy, not knowing he's the most powerful boss in New York. Now, the Chin saw Gotti all over the media, and he just fell back to make Gotti feel like he was powerful and to watch Gotti self-destruct, and it worked. It was like a chess move from the Chin, and that's the reason why the Chin had an almost 30-year run as the boss compared to the 5-year run Gotti had. Gotti was more popular, and we see it everywhere. The most popular is always temporary. It's all about longevity, structure. And if it ain't all about that, then you tell me what it is. I mean, look at Carlo Gambino home, and he was a very wealthy man and hasn't spent a lot of time in jail. He died from natural causes. Now, the comparison between John Gotti and Vinny the Chin was night and day. Gotti wanted to be a star in Showboat. Gigante wanted to be under the radar. Gotti allowed his son to become a part of the organization. Gigante kept his family away from the life. It's been alleged during a sit-down, John Gotti told the Chin that he made John Gotti Jr., and the Chin responded with sorry to hear that. When John Gotti went away to prison, the Chin refused to recognize John Gotti Jr. as boss. And of course, a smart boss don't want to go to war. Both men just felt it was unnecessary. If a war sparked, Gotti would have been hard to hit anyway because he was under surveillance 24/7. And with the media meeting him at his front door every day before he walked out his home, didn't make things any easier. Now, since Gotti knew the Chin had the support of the Lucchese's, he tried to get the Colombos on his side. He was the one that put a battery in Vicarina's back to try to take over the Colombo family from Carmine Persico, but that didn't go well. If the Chin had the Lucchese's and Gotti had the Colombos, it leaves the Bonanos. They didn't have a seat on the commission, so who cares, right? When it came down to a vote, they wouldn't have been included anyway. So, if I left something out, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, check out my playlist I put together. And no, I'm not an organized crime expert. I'm just an expert at common sense. Thanks for watching.